Welcome back to ANN 7 Prime. It's just gone past 7 p.m. Central African time. Thank you for staying with us. If you have just joined us, my name is Audrey Chimwanda. In our top story, the ANC has rejected claims that the current NEC is being manipulated and causing a crisis within the party. This response comes after the former finance minister and former member of the ANC NEC, Trevor Manuel, publicly blamed the current ANC leadership for causing a rift within the party. ANC spokesperson Zizi Kodwa has dismissed Manuel's allegations as unfounded, challenging him to continue working to strengthen the party as Manuel remains a member at branch level. Speaking at a lecture in Johannesburg last night, Manuel said the current leadership is a product of a gross manipulation of membership to the branch systems. Manuel lambasted the current ANC NEC for being dragged by the nose by President Jacob Zuma.
The fear that I have is that the collapse of the conference may actually be in the interest of people who sit in positions right now. You see, I mean, there's a difference for me between leading, where you step up, you convene people, you persuade people, you take them along with you. You convince people that we will face not only fair weather, but we'll face foul weather together. But what you need to be able to do is to communicate with the people. That's what leadership is about in society. Try and look again at what the constitution of that movement speaks about, the aims and objectives and the character of the ANC, to appreciate how large the divergence is from the stated intentions. If this leadership has as little regard for the ANC constitution, what prospects are there then that it would lead an ongoing process for the ownership and socialization of our national constitution?
We are not persuaded or convinced that individuals like Trevor Manuel and others will continue to create doubt about the ANC processes. We are very clear that the processes that we have set out, the roadmap was adopted as early as January up to now, is sufficient enough to give us a credible outcome. For example, it allows for branches to lodge disputes or to lodge appeals.
Allow me to introduce the guests for tonight. Mr. Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, is in studio. Thabo Motle, ANC Youth League NEC member, also in studio. Mr. Lucky Takiso from Transform RSA, he is the deputy president, is also in studio. I'll start with you, Thabo. Welcome, gentlemen, first and foremost. The former finance minister, Trevor Manuel, speaks of what he calls dysfunctional ANC processes, taking it back to Mangaung. Why do you think he's only speaking of this now?
I think the fellow is still stuck in the past congresses or the processes that he did not emerge through of the ANC. It is the same question that I will ask as to why is he raising these matters now if he has been given an opportunity throughout, he has identified those particular challenges during 2012, towards the 2012 Congress. Why really is he raising those issues at this point whilst we are going to, it is almost the end of the term of those comrades who were elected in Mangaung. But we know for a fact that the ANC has got its own processes. Trevor Manuel can be a spokesperson of members in branches, various branches in the country. Branches, every time there is a Congress, the NEC sits and develop guideline and a roadmap towards a Congress as to what is it that branches need to do together with the regions and province. Ultimately, that will produce credible results. Branches have got an opportunity, if processes did not go well, to write disputes to the REC, which will give them a hearing. If they are not satisfied with the outcome of that particular processes, they've got the PEC to complain to, ultimately the NEC. Therefore, I think there is something that he wants to achieve. It's only himself who knows. As for us, we know the process of the ANC are very clear, are open to all the branches, and they produce at all material times credible results.
All right. Mr. Khadima, what do you make of Trevor Manuel's musings last night? I mean, there's a lot of allegations that he put out there, taxpayers' money being used, to suit certain agendas.
Yeah, I think those of us who are analysts and observers of these things, of people like even Trevor Manuel, and maybe I can perhaps aptly describe the situation or his conduct and utterances as follows, that he probably belongs to the pack of Bolombolo tigers. And I think it's good for tourism more than anything else. And by Bolombolo tigers, the Nigerians would say, is somebody who is created by the public relations consultants and inflated by the media. And we know for a long time that the media, for many, many years, the media, mainstream media, kept inflating him, that he was the most effective, most successful Minister of Finance we've ever had. And that was nothing but a lie. And for that reason, that he could go and make, wild allegations, generalized accusations, without adducing any substantive evidence to back up his claims that he made last night to that audience, a captive audience, that pretty much, I think, was lapping everything that came out of his lips, without asking him the hard questions. That even when he was saying that, the situation he described as within the ANC at the moment, he owed it to that audience there to at least have given them evidence, objective facts, as to why he believed that things are what he described them to be, other than just to be generalist in his approach. So the question we wonder is that how did we have somebody like him as a Minister of Finance who could not even, for example, they say that he's a member of the ANC in good standing. The question is to be asked. Right now, the branches of the African National Congress are meeting in branch general meetings to be able to embark on the process of nominations as well as to elect a delegate. Well, in his own branch, has he been part of a branch meeting, branch general meeting? And exactly what did he observe within the branch general meeting, which in his own
and what
area,
responsibility does it take as an ANC member himself?
He hasn't been able to adduce anything. So everything else that he made was just really accusation by innuendo and conjecture. But even to say that the conference most likely will collapse to benefit the incumbents, he should have at least backed up that statement with facts. And there was no facts whatsoever.
Yeah, he says he's giving it 2 to 3 days.
Yeah. But it's a distraction. Actually, we must see his utterances, his conduct, to effectively distract us from having to ask him the hard questions about his tenure when he was Minister of Finance, because all of the problems that we have today, including the unaffordable debt, which now has racked up to 2.5 trillion rand, meaning every woman, man, and child in this country, if we were to divide the debt equally, is 45,000 rand. This is the chief sower of that debt, which currently is drowning all of us.
Mr. Tekisho, yes, is this signs and times of what we can expect come the ANC elective conference, with all this mudslinging that we're seeing coming from ANC members themselves?
No, I think ANC members are quite disciplined, and they will be able to go through these processes as they have been going through them throughout the years. But what I want to raise is really of concern is the issue that he undermines the thinking capacity of the NEC members, wherein he said, no, NEC members are told what to do and what to say. I think it's a serious problem, because he has been part of that NEC up until, I think now recently. This is the only one, Mangaung, where he was not elected. And all these times, what was his role as somebody that is really somebody that feels that, no, the ANC is doing things wrong and is not supposed to have done that? So the question that needs to be asked is, as a Minister of Finance, he had 10 years wherein he would have changed the lives of our people. What did he do? He was investor-friendly, making a lot of money. I would not be surprised if he's a billionaire as well, as we speak now. And he has not helped the ANC in no way for the ANC to be able to better the lives of our people. But who is he to come and talk about those things, while he had the opportunity to assist the ANC to be able to be a better organization that will be able to serve the interests of our people? So my view is really he has failed us, and he does not have the audacity to speak on issues that he's speaking about.
Yeah, he says that President Jacob Zuma, perhaps you could clarify this for us. You know, they're dragged by the nose by President Jacob Zuma, so to speak, perhaps that, you know, they do everything at his pleasure.
I think he's insinuating, in fact, he's insulting the collective led by Comrade President Jacob Zuma to insinuate that actually all NEC members, including the leagues who sit in those meetings, they are nothing but just a decoder where the president has got the remote and controlling them. I think it's a serious offense on the leagues and the NEC itself, and therefore the NEC must then call him to the books, because if they allow him to go into the public, if he's indeed a member in good standing. The problem with the likes of Trevor Manuel is that they do not even understand branch manual, because they've never led at the branch level. They joined the ANC to be at the national space. Right. They don't know the processes, what is happening on the ground. They think they can go to the media and address the media, and everybody should follow suit to what they are saying. But actually they are misleading the nation. Should
he then be held into some kind of accountability by the ANC themselves to perhaps prove these utterances that he made? Because I think they're quite serious if you to really go through and listen to the transcript of what he had to say last night.
Well,
would
the question
that be
has
a fair
always
process?
been, I mean, which ANC? If we look at it, we've got an ANC now that the disciplinary committee is chaired by one Derek Hanegom, who is himself a renegade. And that's a situation that is just certainly not sustainable, and if anything is going to lead to a mortal blow to this party. But that being the case, December is just around the corner. The ANC will elect the leadership. I don't believe that the conference will collapse, even though others might try to collapse the conference through the courts. I think that the conference will be able to go through, because ordinary members are exercising their democratic right now through the branch general meetings. So that is the one thing. But I think what we need to be analyzing or asking more questions about is that, well, who actually is Trevor Manuel? And more fundamentally, say we talk about morality, ethics, and values, all of that. I'm asking, what is moral, what is ethical, what is legally tenable about somebody who threw a javelin effectively? The one day he was Minister of Finance, and then he emerges, on the other hand, sitting on the boards of the very same companies that he failed to ensure that they can be able to pay taxes. We are dealing now with Paradise Papers, and when you look at the Paradise Papers, all of that $200 billion that was illegally siphoned out of this country, he was one of the captains who presided over that ship that effectively shipped all these $200 billions. And more so, he sits on the board of the very same companies. And I'm asking, what kind of morality and ethics is that? So here we are dealing with an individual that we have to look at him fairly and squarely and ask him to account for what he is. The issue is that, well, unless he had come up with objective facts to make the allegations that he did last night, we can't take him any serious, because he hasn't done that. But we need to be saying, let's look at his tenure. Let's look at, because as John Maxwell eloquently puts it, that in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, he talks about the law of legacy. And in terms of the law of legacy, we can look at the legacy of Trevor Manuel when he was both an ANC member, whether or not he was active in the branches, I don't know. But when he was an active ANC member on the National Executive Committee and holding an exceedingly powerful position of Minister of Finance, he took decisions that seeked only to benefit him, as we know today. He sits on the board of various companies, of SA breweries that he externalized from this country. He sits on the board of Old Mutual, which he externalized of this country. He sits on the board of NMF Rothschilds in South Africa, which is an entity. So the list goes on in terms of his involvement. His wife, who was the Director General in the ministry, is now running ABSA, Barclays ABSA, which again, there the question has to be asked as to, if at Treasury they were presiding over the conduct of the banks in one form or another in terms of supervision, how is it therefore that they could have taken such people and put them asking, what morality and ethics is that? So here we have to look at this, like I said, we have to address it.
Mr. Khadima, the fear-mongering that is being spread, by certain sectors of the community about the ANC elective conference collapsing. Do you think perhaps it is coming from what we saw happening in the Eastern Cape? Can we really base, this suspicion on that, or this perspective on that?
No, obviously, the leadership of the ANC, which is the NEC, is quite aware of some of these dynamics that are taking place in provinces. And we believe that they will be well prepared for the national conference based on the consideration of what has happened. Now, we do not know why is he raising this thing. Actually, we may imply that he might know something that we don't know around these issues. Perhaps he might be planning this. It's highly possible. So because we know that there are plans that they're currently dealing with to be able to prevent such type of things. Leadership is sitting today, tomorrow, to deal exactly with those issues. So when he talks about these things in a manner that he has confidence in, we begin to doubt whether is he not going to ensure that that happens, because there is no way that the people that talks about radical economic transformation and land expropriation without compensation, but within the legal framework, they have no reason to fear anything because the people agrees with them. Now, if those that are fearful and do not have confidence, and which we, of course, think is part of, might be able to plan some things that we do not know of, and that's why perhaps he's talking about these things.
Yeah, and speaking of who is part of who, do you think perhaps this speaks of the different slates that we've seen coming out of the ANC as we approach the elective conference, Thabo? There's utterances that we're hearing from different ANC members. Case in point, Trevor Manuel.
I think the probability it's very high that they might have calculated, because obviously he is not in support of NDZ, because they might have made calculation and arrived at a determination that we will not make it in this Congress. Therefore, the alternative plan is to ensure that the conference does not take place. Hence, he is saying what he just said yesterday. It might be their second plan to ensure that if they don't have numbers in that Congress, the only alternative to have is to collapse the Congress so that they are not exposed. They have to be seen by the world that they have lost democratically in that Congress.
It's a very interesting take.
I can assure you, the Congress of the African National Congress is going to sit as planned, unless if the NEC of the ANC decide otherwise. It will not be Trevor Manuel's will or wish that it happens according to his will or wish. It will be only the NEC can decide otherwise, looking at other matters that might affect those processes. Otherwise, so far there are no challenges. The NEC is also meeting tomorrow to discuss some of agent matters that they need to discuss as an organization. And branches are going through up until the 15th. From there, they will deal with disputes. They will give them time and resolve those disputes so that by the time we go to the conference, all disputes are resolved. Those that unfortunately will not be satisfied, obviously they are going to rush to court, but the Congress will proceed.
Mr. Khadima, do you think there's a real fear of an NDZ win? Thus, we're hearing all these utterances from within ANC.
The looters and those that have accumulated vast amounts of wealth unethically, immorally, and more so because the apartheid system assisted them to do so. And they, in turn, made sure that they share some of that loot with people that were wearing the ANC uniform, whereas their blood was not ANC. They are the ones that are worried about an NDZ win. But anybody who gets elected to be president of the ANC together will be elected to the National Executive Committee of the ANC. They do not have a choice but to have to do and practicalize what NDZ stands for. And that simply is what South Africa needs in this present time. We need to radically transform the economy of this country. We need to radically reform the macroeconomic policy of this country. We need to ensure that we repudiate the mistake that has been made, that of concentrating power in national treasury. I mean, we had Trevor Manuel that was there. He borrowed money from whoever he borrowed money without recourse to anybody. And today we are living with the effects of that. Unfortunately and sadly, even the current Minister of Finance has not seen the light, has not smelt the coffee. Hence, he can still believe that he needs to go and borrow 239 billion rand for this year alone. The question is, well, what conditions are being placed upon him? But what we need to do is to insist on people like Trevor Manuel to have to account for their own conduct during their tenure, and also demand that even those that are currently at the in the cockpit, that indeed they are able to fly this
plane
to
this
plane of state.
So is there a real fear of the ANC elective conference going ahead, because there's a real fear of NDZ winning, and then the status quo would have to be changed with regards to radical economic transformation? Do you think that is the real fear that is out there, that is provoking these statements that we're hearing?
Yeah, certainly. I think that there is this real fear that is there, but unfortunately, as Thabo has already alluded, the NEC is meeting, and the NEC is quite cognizant of what is currently happening in relation to the court cases and what may happen, which they will be able to prevent. I believe, we trust them that they will be able to do that. But what is really of concern also is the fear that when NDZ is going to be in power, people may have to go to jail. That's the unfortunate part thereof, because people have been looting and it's known. What we just have to do is to investigate and be able to get the culprits, and then they must be able to be held accountable. And I think that is what they are fearing.
Right. Very confident, Thabo, that all your structures are in place. Any issues that need to be ironed out within the ANC going forward to the elective conference are being dealt with right now?
Yes, of course, these are processes of the ANC. There are structures in place to deal with those issues as and when they arise. And I think all it's well. And we are urging members to say, if branches are supporting any candidate, those branches should not be disrupted, because members shall have spoken in those particular branches to say, this is what we prefer towards this Congress. Because remember, as much as we are so much into these factions or these preferences towards this December conference, it is not about NTZ or Cyril. It is at the end about the ANC that has got the responsibility from after this conference to ensure that the ANC in government continues to deliver service to these people of this country, because the people of this country have got no organization to trust. Their hope, their aspiration are carried by the African National Congress as the leader of society. Yeah. Therefore, at all material times, we must not forget that speak as if all these preferences are everything. The ANC will emerge, and once it emerges, it must emerge collective. After the 17th, after electing the top 6 or top 7, depending whether the conference will adopt the second deputy DSG, there will be no NTZ, there will be no CR, there will be only ANC that will be carrying the mandate given by the conference to continue servicing the people of this country.
Well, Trevor Manuel says the manipulation is coming from the branch level. That is where it's being operated from. Is there a chance or a room for that to actually happen?
No, but I've said Trevor Manuel is not the spokesperson of branches. Members at the branch level, when they see that processes are not being followed because there are guidelines, and it's not a secret, they've got access to those guidelines, roadmaps and everything. If they are not satisfied about the processes, members in good standing must raise those disputes, and those disputes will be attended.
Mr. Khadima, are you convinced that the road to the ANC elective conference is paved in a very clear way and things will work out?
From what I've seen in terms of how the nomination process has been running, there is nothing that leads to or indicates what has been alleged by Trevor Manuel et al. If anything, it just, I think it's a normal process. The conference will come and go, and it will run, I think, as all other conferences of the ANC have run. And this is not the first conference where there's real contestation. There's been other conferences where there's been contestation and where people were diametrically opposed, but after conference they had to find each other. Will there be a split after it? I think that there might be others who are unhappy and might leave, but that can only be good for the ANC because you need the real ANC leadership needs to stand up. And the real ANC leadership that needs to stand up is a leadership that understands that the need for this country now is to radically transform the economy of this country, is to ensure that this vast concentration, you cannot have a country whereby 1/10 of 1% owns the combined value of wealth of the 90% of the population.
Yeah.
That is unsustainable. And those that are keeping this loot, they need to act responsibly because John F. Kennedy said this: a country that cannot look after the majority who are poor will not be able to protect the very few who are extremely rich. And the very extremely rich ones in this country, they need to take that advice for free from John F. Kennedy to heart.
Yes.
If they cannot ensure that the wealth that they've amassed can be able to benefit the majority, they will not be protected by anybody. Even their wealth will not be able to protect them.
And
that's the real thing that
we have a time bomb on our hands.
Yes.
A revolt can happen anytime. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your input. I certainly appreciate you being a part of this conversation. You're at home for watching as well. ANN 7 Prime takes a very short break. Do stay with us. We're back with more news and updates in just a bit.